horn teacher at the MSU Community Music School, and I'm making this video to help people prepare for the MSBOA All-State auditions. Now that was the piece for the high school, and it's found on page 49 of what's called the Blue Book, and it looks like something like this, and it can also be found in the book Kling, K-L-I-N-G, 40 Studies for Horn, and it's number 11 in that book. So it's not as technically challenging as some of the pieces in the past, but it does have a lot of high notes, so we'll talk about that in a minute. First of all, I want to talk about some easy things that you can do to make it sound a lot better. We're going to start with, first of all, if you want to pause the tape and measure number every measure so that when I talk about a measure number you can know exactly what I'm talking about. And the other thing you can write in is empty water. This is a piece that you might start and think that you're fine, and then halfway through the piece it'll start to gurgle. So write in the measure numbers and empty water, and then come back and watch the rest of the video. Okay, first of all, I'm going to start with dynamics. Dynamics and expression. So the dynamics are all pretty much written in the piece. There's lots of these hairpins. So you really want to do those very obviously. That'll make a good impression on the judges right away. See? So just really make it obvious, make it exaggerated. And then in places where there aren't specific dynamics, use the contour of the line to tell you what to do. So as the line goes up, crescendo. As the line comes down, diminuendo. Starting in measure 8, for example, there's a forte mark for this middle section, but there's no dynamics. But you still want to have dynamics. You want to go up with the line. Da da dee da 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 da. Da 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 da. So anything like that will help the dynamics and the expression of the piece sound more musical and more natural. A couple other things you can do to make it more espressivo is observe there's a retard in measure 21, which you want to make sure that you do, and it brings the middle section to a nice place, and then you start the recap and finish it. Next thing I want to talk about is just a simple fingering thing that can make things sound a little better. In several different places, you have measure 3, measure 7, 25, and 29. You have a slur from the E to the F sharp. And in a lot of horns, that's a real break. That's a real breaky area. Listen, if you do it with the normal fingering, it doesn't naturally go up to the F sharp. So what I do is I play the F sharp on trigger 1 and 2, and that makes that slur very, very smooth. So basically all you're doing is you're putting the trigger on one note early. Instead of putting it on the G sharp, you put it on the F sharp. And it sounds really, really smooth. So that's definitely a trick you'll want to use. Let's talk about breaths. In this piece, it's very important that the breath holes, the holes that are created when you take a breath, don't interrupt the lyrical quality of the piece. So what you want to do is try to make those breath holes as small as possible. And one trick you can do is hold the note before the breath as long as possible. Really concentrate on keeping that sustained note into the breath and then making the breath very short. So here's an example of if you leave the note too early and kind of anticipate the breath, you're going to have a big hole. Okay, so that's what might happen, if you don't think about it too much. But here's where I'm holding the note before the breath as long as I possibly can before I take the breath. See how nice that sounds, and it doesn't interrupt, and you hardly even hear the breath. So do that on every breath that you can, and also write in all the breaths. Don't leave them up to chance. Write them in, do them the same way every time. That way it's much more likely to happen when you get to your audition. And one thing I want to talk about, before we talk about the high notes, is rhythm. The rhythm is pretty straightforward, but what you want to do is make sure that your dotted 8/16 rhythms are snappy. So D, da, 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 da. Really subdivide those and even make them a hair snappier than the actual perfect subdivision, and it'll sound really good. See how snappy those are, and they have a nice lilt to them, but they're very precise and ding da dee, ding da dee. And then the triplets need to be on the hair lazy side. Da da ba ba da ba be da da ba da ba ba. So you'll have this in 14 and 15. Here's to show you the contrast between my snappy dotted 8/16 and my lazy triplets. Something like that. So the last thing I want to talk about is the high notes. This is obviously the biggest challenge of this piece. You have 5 or 6 high A's, so you really have to have a good high A. You have to have a good relationship with your high A, and there are also a high C and a high B, which there are alternate notes to play for those. So basically make sure that your high A is strong and it's a usable note within your range. You've integrated that note into your range. So that's going to be, try to find some exercises. Have your teacher help you find exercises that work up to the A and maybe past it. If the high A is the highest note you ever play, it's not going to be comfortable because it's going to be at the edge. So you want to try to warm up to the B flat, the B, the high C. Get those notes working, and so then the high A won't seem so high. So work past the high A, and then when you're practicing the piece, make sure that you don't make the mistake of hitting a wall when you hit the high A. So let's say you don't get up to the high A and then you stop, something like this. Okay, so my high A didn't come out. So what I do, I just stopped. I hit a brick wall, and that's as far as I'll ever go. If you keep doing that, you're not going to get very far with this piece. What you have to do is practice playing through those no matter what. So practice your high A exercises, get the high A working, and then no matter what happens, when you're practicing these phrases, try to get a flow, and anytime you have a high A or a high note that doesn't speak, just blow right through it, whatever happens. Okay, so I'm missing a lot of notes there, and I'm trying to miss the high notes on purpose, but what I want to show you is that no matter what happens, I just keep on going. And that's going to be the most important skill for you to practice as far as getting through this piece. And then as you go along, you have several weeks to practice those high A's, getting those better and better, and they will start to come. Another strategy you can use is to back off the volume just a little bit, so the high A's will pop out a little bit. So the alternate notes in bar 13 are written so you don't have to play the high C and the high B. If you don't have them, just forget it. Just play the alternate notes. In the blue book, it's written like this. Okay, so goes up to the A and G instead of a high C and a high B. that's fine. In the Kling book, it actually does something slightly different. It goes up to an F on beat 3. So it does this. So in the Kling book, the original version, it has a progression up to the high A at the beginning of bar 14 and then back down. I actually like that a little better. So you can do either one. So make sure you go back and practice listening to the video. I put the full playthrough at the beginning of the video so that you can just turn on the video and watch that if that's all you want to watch. If you've already watched the commentary, you don't have to watch it every time. Just go back and listen to the way I play it. Try to get that in your ear. Try to imitate as much as possible. You know, it wasn't perfect what I did, but it's a pretty good rendition. That's definitely how it goes. If you play it like that, you'll certainly get into Allstate. And then, once you figure out how it goes, then you can add your own personal stamp on it. But good luck preparing for MSBOA high school Allstate auditions.